Good afternoon, Namaste. It's a pleasure and honor to have with us Mr. Bindu Madhav Khire for this session on the LGBTQA community. I'd like to thank Dr. Satyalakshmi, Dr. Yuvraj, and all the doctors for being here today for this important session. Uh, I am Dr. Naina Atle and I am coordinator of the Gandhi Fellowship Program, which has been nurtured by all of you all here in NIL. Mr. Bindu Madhav Khire is an LGBTQA rights activist, empath, speaker, and writer. He's founder of the Samapathik Trust that explores narratives around the non binary genders and offers a ear to the woes of the LGBTQA community. Through its services in counseling, it has helped many overcome depression and other mental illnesses that arise out of a society that is not yet ready to accept them as a community. The advocacy efforts of the trust have received recognition and attention over the years by civil society as well as the government. Mr. Bindu Madhav Khire is also instrumental in starting Advait Pure, a forum for the LGBTQA community.
Well, thank you all for inviting me here, and this is a very golden opportunity for me to speak on a subject that we generally don't get very many opportunities to speak about. Is everybody comfortable with English, or should I switch between English and Hindi?
Preferably English.
Sorry?
Preferably English.
English is okay? Okay, great. So, my name is Bindu Madhav Khire. I'm a gay activist, and I've been working on this issue for more than 20 years in Pune. I established my trust, Samapathik Trust, and recently I have just wound it up and I've started my own private foundation called Bindu Queer Rights Foundation to work on the same issues, health and advocacy on the rights of LGBT community. So what we are going to do today is I'm going to give you a brief background on the terms and understanding basics of sexual minorities. Then discuss a few legal challenges, medical issues, and social concerns. I would want to do this by within half an hour or so that the more time we get for discussions and question answers, the better. But since the fundamentals terminology needs to be clear, I need to first address that. Generally, we look at sexuality in 3 dimensions. There are more than that, but the most important dimensions for any sexuality, gender sexuality, are 3. The first, of course, is anatomy. In layman's term, whether you have reproductive and sexual organs of a baby boy when you are born, a baby boy or a baby girl. Seems simple. And based on that, we would have on the medical certificate sex, male or female. There has been an implicit understanding that there are only 2 possibilities, that the baby could be a baby boy or a baby girl, which means that the external and the internal reproductive and sexual systems would be either or, either this or that. What has not been spoken about is that just like our various other organs of the body can have variations, similarly reproductive organs could also have variations at birth or maybe even later on. So there are a few babies which are born who have ambiguous genital presentation, which means looking at the anatomy, you cannot clearly state whether it is a boy or it is a girl. For example, if a baby were born to me who has 2 testes but no penis and a vaginal opening, no penis and testes, should I call it that baby boy or baby girl? It's very difficult to answer this question. Now, this is something I have simplified it because we are talking of the external presentation where at birth I know the ambiguity, I can notice the ambiguity. But there will be cases where externally no ambiguity is seen at all. But some of the internal reproductive organs could have variation. For example, externally, you may not see any variation at all, but internally on one side, you could have ovary, and on the other side, testicular tissue. The gonadal development would not be ovaries on both sides or testes on both sides, but part of it. So you have internal presentation which could be ambiguous. You have external presentation which could be ambiguous. At times you could have both the presentation which could be ambiguous. What do I call such children? If you look at the medical textbooks, the terms hermaphrodite or pseudo-hermaphrodite were used. Even now, if you look at medical textbook, these are the terms that are used. From the human rights perspective, these are not considered correct terms because they medicalize it. So, an improvement was made, DSD. The new term that was used was DSD, disorders of sexual differentiation. But again, the word disorder was stigmatizing. So the correct term that has now been accepted by everyone, and that is what we generally use, is intersex. INTER, inter, SEX, intersex. This is a term that is acceptable to intersex community also, which is predominantly why everybody should try to use that. Everybody can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Great. So the first sexual minority is community who has reproductive or sexual anatomy at variance from others, ambiguous from others. There's no clarity between he or she. Now there are various reasons why a baby could be born with such variance. There could be chromosomal variations, there could be hormonal variations, there could be receptor variations, cell receptor variations. For example, you are aware that if it's a baby girl, the sex chromosomes are XX. If it's a baby boy, the sex chromosomes are XY. But instead of having this 46, that is 23 pairs of chromosomes in each cell, let's say there were 47. And the 23rd, instead of being a pair, was a triad, XXY. Since we consider that your genetic material is the blueprint of how your body is going to be constructed, variations in the sex chromosomes are bound to result in the change in that blueprint. There will be times where the chromosomes, instead of being 46, could be 45. One less, only X. There is no X on the other side, neither Y on the other side. It will lead to a change in the blueprint. There are times where hormones may play a role. You are aware that as the fetus grows, a correct amount of various hormones have to be secreted at specific intervals for a specific duration. Lack or excess of these will influence development of anatomy. For example, excessive secretion of androgens will viralize female anatomy. So, hormones may play a role. And thirdly, cell receptors may also play a role. For example, androgen insensitivity syndrome. In some cases, the person may have sex chromosomes as XY, that is male, which means technically the anatomy that develops should be male. But what happens is that when testes secrete androgens, testosterone, it is supposed to be absorbed by the cells, passing through the receptors and act on it. Let's say there is a deficiency of those receptors. there's a complete lack or partial lack of those receptors, which means your blood will have testosterone, but your cells will not have access to it because they cannot penetrate it. In which case, although the chromosomes are XY, testosterone is secreted, androgens are secreted, but your body is not able to act on it. It will feminize the body. So you will have various scenarios in which the body will differ from the norm. Now, what is the percentage of this population? Now, each of these aspects have different percentages, and sadly in India there has not been really much studies done on intersex issues at all. But generally it is assumed that between 10 to 15,000 there would be one who will have some kind of ambiguity. I need to underline one fact, that in most cases the ambiguity is so minor that a person may not even know that he or she is different. It is only when it is startlingly different, very obvious, that the person may realize, the parents realize that yes, the child is different. Now the problem with such children is that in India, being a very patriarchal culture, most of them are raised as boys. In many cases, they approach a surgeon to remove surgically those organs which do not concur with the sex they have chosen. So the problem is that to fit in the binary system, surgeries are performed on babies by guessing or by determination of a gender which the parents have chosen for the baby without us knowing or the parents really knowing what is the gender of the baby. Because you want the baby to fit into this binary system, male or female. The intentions are good. Theoretical intentions are very good, that the baby needs to adjust in the society. It will be easier for the baby to be of one gender or the other and be accepted as part of the community. Practically the problems are twofold. One is that we do not know the gender of the baby. What happens if I raise the baby as a boy and the baby starts saying that I want to look, behave, and I consider myself as a girl? You come to realize too late that you have done the wrong surgery. And the second aspect of it is, your reproductive systems grow and mature rapidly around adolescence. The sexual functioning starts at that point. So some of these surgeries could have severe side effects which are not manifest at the time the surgeries are done, when the child is a baby, but are now which manifest when the child reaches adolescence. So all in all, the Western understanding now is that unless the ambiguity results in the danger to the life of the child, unless the child's life is in danger, do not perform any such surgeries. Let the child become an adult and then let the child decide whether the child wants to keep on being an intersex, which is okay, wants to be a girl and wants to remove the male organ, which is okay, wants to be a male and wants to remove the female organ, that is also okay. So I know a couple of intersex people who have not done any surgeries at all, who know they are intersex, they are unmarried, because the social challenges and the legal challenges are huge. One thing is that they are afraid that if their sex is known, they would be harassed, bullied, ragged, abused perhaps. They will have problems in finding a job. they will have problems in finding accommodation. So most intersex people never disclose who they are. When I wrote my book in Marathi, Introduction to Intersex, I had great difficulty in finding people who would, without giving their real name, would talk to me on who they were, what was the variation, and what were the challenges they faced. And they were huge. Legally also it was a challenge because legally parents, if they mention the child as male and if the person considers that he or she is a she, how do you deal with it with a person who is intersex? Legally, in fact, there was a case in Tamil Nadu about 2-3 years ago where a person who was selected for a government post, trained in the police, by the way. And when they went for a medical examination, they had passed all the person had passed the test. She was rejected because her genitals were not of a woman and they were neither of that of a man. So she had to approach the High Court, and the High Court ruled that if she considers herself female, the anatomy should not play a picture at all. She has the right of whatever gender she wants to be. In fact, the answer judgment had just come out after that, and we'll talk on that a bit later. But it is only in 2017 that we have started mentioning intersex and their rights. What are their rights? What are their obligations? Till then, the society had not really considered this issue at all because such a minuscule statistically, and the fact that even they were not willing to, be on the stage to talk about themselves, which means most of the population still does not know that intersex is an issue, a sexual minority. That is part one. That is dimension one. The second dimension of sexuality is gender identity. You have seen Tritiyapanthis on the street clapping and begging and asking for money. And most population, most of us do not know what that really means. The number of questions that I am asked on my helpline, sir, इनको नीचे क्या होता है? What organs do they have? Why do they behave this way? How can you become like that, or how can you not become like that? These are common questions that are asked. And this is the issue of gender. You realize that in the first part that we talked about, we said that we do not encourage any surgeries, intersex surgeries on babies because we do not know the gender. And that is the crucial issue. We have assumed that if I have male anatomy, I am born with the male anatomy. Obviously, that is my biological sex is male. My gender is bound to be male. Which means that I am bound to process the signals I receive like a male brain and respond accordingly, to put it in layman's terms. If I am born with female anatomy, I am bound to have female gender, which means that I am bound to process the signals I get the way a typical female does and respond accordingly. So the fact that you could have an anatomy which is not in sync with how you perceive the world has not really been studied at all till recently. That these two are distinct constructs. Your anatomy and your gender for most people is the same. Male and male, female and female. To put it in a layman's term, your body of a male and the brain of a male, body of a female and the brain of a female. But in some cases, as I mentioned about Tritiyapanthis, there are some boys whose anatomy is completely male. There is no ambiguity there. All the organs are functional, so there is no immaturity or non-functionality there. But their brain, to put it simply, is hardwired to respond the way a female does. Which means they are bound to think of themselves that they are women and not men. Such persons whose anatomy is not in sync with their gender are called transgender. And the Tritiyapanthis we see on the street are basically transgenders, that is, body of a male and gender female. Now, this is one type, male to female transgenders. There is another type, female to male transgenders also, although we don't see them on the street because the society doesn't have any such notion that there is the other type also. There are also some women who are anatomically women, but their brain is wired like a male and they consider themselves to be male. So it is female to male transgenders. They are called as trans men. So you have trans women and trans men. What is the percentage? Generally it is assumed that 1 in 11,000 boys will have the gender of a girl. And generally it is assumed that around 1 in 30,000 females will have gender of a male. So these are statistics, but these are not Indian statistics. Let me tell you that. I am quoting this from Kaplan's and Shadow's textbook of psychiatry because there has been no such survey done in India to know what are the statistics in India. But again, as doctor had mentioned, that the parents would confine the child to the house and beat him because he was cross-dressing, the baby child was cross-dressing. That is something we see everywhere. A girl dressing in jeans and t-shirt is relatively acceptable, at least in cities. At least in cities, not in small villages. But a boy wearing a sari or a Punjabi dress is simply a no-no. And they go through a lot of abuse and sexual abuse too, because then these children are obviously sexually vulnerable. They are alienated from their own parents and friends. So anyone who befriends them, shows kindness and affection, they are willing to be with them and do whatever they want to keep that one support that they have, which is why many of these do get sexually abused. Now, the question that follows is this natural? And that is what medical science always seems to ask. Is this natural or is this unnatural? And this has been considered unnatural, just like being intersex is considered unnatural. Now, the problem with these words natural and unnatural is you are medicalizing what nature has given us and classifying them between, if this is statistically the norm, anything who does not fall into that norm is unnatural. But the fact is that you cannot be trained to be a transgender. This is what nature has given us. Why? Science does not know yet. Maybe we will know it tomorrow, maybe day after, maybe never, I don't know. But as of today, we do not know why some boys have gender of a girl, why some of them become Tritiyapanthis, why some girls consider themselves to be men and want to live like men. What we do know is that yes, they exist. It is not a Western fad or Western import. They exist. And then the question is that if they exist, what are their rights? Are they to be treated on par with the rest of the society? Or the way they have been treated so far, ostracized and living in the fringes somewhere outside the city? That was the question that was asked to the Supreme Court in a petition filed by National Legal Services Authority, NALSA versus Union of India. And the Supreme Court gave an sterling judgment stating that since men are not willing to consider them as men, women are not ready to consider them as women, and they themselves are considered to be a third gender, because that is the word that has been used if you look at older texts. Trunaputri, Tritiyapanthi. These are the kind of words that you will look at in ancient texts. The Supreme Court stated a new legal identity be created called third gender, and they are given the right to decide how they want to identify themselves. It is not for their parents, it is not for society, it is not for the law or the medical science to decide how they want to identify themselves. It is their fundamental right to decide whether they want to identify themselves as male or female or transgender. This extends not only to transgender persons but also to intersex persons. Whether they want to identify themselves as male or female or transgender, it's up to them. Now, lastly, before I finish the second dimension, some of them, because they identify with the other gender, may go in for certain surgeries or hormonal treatment to align their body with their gender. For example, a boy who believes he is a girl, as an adult, may undergo surgery to remove his testes, remove his penis, may undergo surgery to have a vagina constructed called vaginoplasty, or may undergo breast implant. It would depend on the amount of money they have, the desire to change to a structure which is concurrent with their gender. We need to understand very clearly, gender cannot be altered. The body can be altered to fit the gender to some extent. Not to the extent of reproduction, but to some extent. But gender cannot be changed through counseling, medications, or any kind of therapy. There have been inhuman experiments made to change person's gender. It has come to nothing. And now the World Psychiatric Association and the Indian Psychiatric Society has given us written statements. In fact, I had written to them. Dr. Dinesh Bogra, who was the president of WPA, and Dr. G. Prasad Rao, who was the president of IPS in, I think, 2016. I told them that we need a written statement from you stating that this is a natural variant of gender and sexuality. It should not be a pathology, and there is no cure because it is not an illness. It should not be considered an illness and to try to treat them into becoming straight or heterosexual. They were very supportive, and in March 2016 they gave me those written statements. I can send it to doctor, the scanned copies, which we give it to parents when the parents come to us for counseling, that this is not an disorder or an illness to be cured, because even now many psychiatrists who have learned from the older curriculum, if you look at the older textbook of psychiatry, all of these are considered to be perversion disorders. It is only now post DSM-4 that these are not considered to be deviations, not something to be fixed, but counseling may be needed to make the person comfortable with who he or she is. So you can well imagine the trauma of living in a society that is so transphobic and so discriminatory, and no doubt that the percentage of mental health issues that transgenders have is above the average norm otherwise. It has also been proven that as they start living and working in the LGBT friendly, inclusive, non-discriminatory environment, the frequency and intensity of these illnesses goes down. So there is at least one factor which is entirely socially related, that your mental health depends on the acceptance levels around you. Your parents, your school, your working environment, your neighborhood. Laws. In fact, one study in the US has shown that wherever gay marriages are legal, the mental health of the community living there is much better as compared to those where there are still anti-gay laws or gay marriages are not legal. So it is important to understand that mental health issues play a crucial role when it comes to sexual and gender minorities, because there are no support systems, very few support systems, and most of them are, the systems that are out there are either ignorant of these issues or outright discriminatory and homophobic. Work environment, education environment. And finally, the last one. When you reach adolescence, you start feeling sexually, emotionally attracted to a person of one sex or the other. This is your sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is a long-term, reasonably stable sexual and emotional attraction to a particular sex. Most of us are only attracted to persons of the opposite sex over your lifetime. So most of us are heterosexual, men sexually emotionally attracted to women and vice versa. Heterosexual, some of us attracted to both, which is called bisexuality. And 3% of all men, 3% of all men forever would be attracted only to men and no one else. That number is actually much bigger than you think. 3% of every 100 men is not a small number. And about 1 to 1.5% of all women are exclusively lesbian, attracted only to women and no one else. Here also the issues are more or less same as transgenders, but in some way different. Same in the sense that they have issues related to pairing up with someone with the parents choose for them. For example, gay men cannot disclose their sexuality because they are afraid of what the parents would say, the hurt it would cause their parents, what would happen, whether their friends will ostracize them, whether they will lose a job. So they have to remain, the term is called staying in the closet, not being out about who you are. And the colleagues will keep on questioning them, अभी 28 उम्र हो गई है, अभी शादी कब करोगे, 30 उम्र हुई है, अभी शादी कब करोगे. You find pretexts, some excuses of why you are not getting married. Your relatives keep on asking, and in the end you end up marrying someone you are not attracted and you are not in love with at all. It is a nightmare for both the husband and the wife, both. In fact, in 2014 I think we no, even earlier than that, we had a workshop with the family court. The family court was there near Alpha Theatre. Now it has shifted to Shivajinagar. But the family court there, they had already started and they continue to see increasing number of cases where gay closeted men are married due to family pressures, societal pressures, or lesbians marry, and they no longer want to continue. They find it a nightmare to be physically intimate with a person you are disgusted with, and the marriages, they are coming there for divorces and separation. And the counselors there, they are not aware of these issues. They do not have an understanding that they have never been taught on these issues. So we were invited, Justice Shahapure at that time was the Chief Justice, and we were invited to talk on these issues to the counselors, lawyers and the judges themselves, because we need to understand that neither they have not been taught these issues either. So we had conducted this session with them, and it was very productive because then we were able to establish linkages with them, so that whenever a couple where sexuality was an issue, homosexuality or bisexuality, then at least we could confidently refer them to counselors who had at least understood the basics and they knew, because then the counselors would try to keep on working on them to make that person straight. How we could actually make that gay man like women so that he could continue with the marriage. But you cannot change your sexual orientation. Just like you cannot change your gender, you cannot change your sexual orientation. Again, it's written in the statement that your sexual orientation, whether you like it or not, you have to live with it the rest of your life. So these are the society problems that we keep on saying. But even if you come out as gay, there's always discrimination, ostracization. I do not know whether I will have equal rights to others, and in most of the cases it's not, because as you are aware, the law, Indian Penal Code 377, criminalized intercourse against the order of nature, which means any intercourse which did not result in procreation was considered to be a crime. It's a legacy of the British era. It was only in 2018 that the Supreme Court 5-judge bench ruled unanimously that it is unconstitutional. If two adult consenting partners, whatever their sex or gender and sexuality, they want to have intercourse, it is nobody's business. It is not the government's business, it is not the society's business, it is not the business of your culture or religion at all. They have certain rights, and the right of privacy is one of the fundamental rights. the fundamental right of privacy is not actually enshrined in the Constitution. That was one of the issues. I will not go into the details of the legal history from the High Court to Supreme Court from 2002 to 18. But you must have heard of the case of Aadhaar card. The right to privacy was the issue of whether collecting biometric data by the government was a right of was violation of your privacy, and a 9-judge bench was set up by the Supreme Court to delve into this fundamental aspect, whether right of privacy is a fundamental right, although it is not explicitly enshrined in the Constitution. And the 9-judge bench gave a clear ruling that right of privacy is a fundamental right, which means it cannot be violated so easily. It's only in exceptional cases and only by following due process set by law that you could actually have such exceptions, which made this case stronger that what you do in your bedroom is nobody's business. And which is why gay sex or same-sex intercourse ceased to be a crime between consenting adults done in privacy from 2018, September 6, 2018. But that has removed that negative part. But we have no affirmative rights. Two men may be living together. One of my director of Bindu Queer Rights Foundation has been in a relationship with his boyfriend for 10 years. But that relationship is not recognized as a live-in relationship. A man staying with a woman in the nature of marriage is a live-in relationship by Indian law. In fact, Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act is based on it. But this is not applicable here. Gay marriage is not legal yet. You can't have that person as a dependent in various policies you may have. So there are many legal challenges that we do have. Which is why gay couples you do not see many gay couples openly stating that we are couples. They tend to stay together as roommates rather than staying as same-sex partners. A couple of petitions are there in the High Court in Delhi and Kerala, where gay marriage we have asked that Special Marriage Act be amended to include gay marriage also. We will see how that goes. But this is the brief background of sexual and gender minorities. From your context, the issue is when you are providing a service to any LGBTI community member, whether your ignorance, lack of experience, prejudices will play overt or covert role in providing those services. And for that we need to understand what your concerns are and what your experience has been, if any, so that we can talk on those. Because if a person comes to you for service, whatever his sex, gender and sexuality, the ideal is that we will not discriminate. We don't care. When it comes to provision of services, non-discrimination is the foundation of giving any kind of service. But there is no denying the fact that we have all come up from the same culture which looks at certain issues in a certain way, and we have learned to perceive some things a certain way, to be uncomfortable in working with certain people of certain count because of our past experiences. So we will have to start to unlearn what we have learned to see whether we can now develop a new understanding so that your output will become more efficient, better, have a higher quality, will not be discriminated. So I'm now going to, it's I think 1:15, so I'm going to have 15 minutes of question answers. It's 1:20, so we have 15 minutes of question answers. I would like you to hear your concerns, questions, comments and even suggestions for that matter.
First of all, thank you very much. It was quite an interesting discussion that started in the naturopathy field. Now all the people here assembled, we have come up with a regular medical training, and in that none of these issues are covered or talked anything that is not there in the syllabus is not taught, and then, but then when they come to practice, they are exposed, and then, in a way, but I don't know in our clinical practice whether we are getting, those cases and then we are addressing them. But to me personally, we have an MOU with one research organization in Hyderabad, and he being a pediatric surgeon, he was saying of late there are more such cases. And then I am operating on even 1 year, 1.5 year children, and numbers are increasing. Is it due to some, measures to be taken during pregnancy, or excess medication which is resulting in this? I do not know, and it's just a loud thinking.
No, I can answer
Uh-huh.
the yes. There are certain medications which can cause excessive ironization, which is why certain medications are not to be taken in pregnancy. And so it is seen that in certain cases, medications are also may play a role in this. The second reason why doctors see an increasing number of cases is that this is my experience, so I cannot generalize it everywhere. I see that in cases where people come from villages and are not that educated or do not have the financial resources, they are better able to explain it away, say कि भगवान की करनी है, भगवान ने जैसा दिया है वह, and in some ways they seem to be more accepting. They could say, but if they have resources are from city, they are more likely to approach doctors who have the skills to do certain such surgery. For example, those that I have interviewed and I have counseled so far, most of them have come from a rural background where even if there was such a doctor to do it, they wouldn't have the financial wherewithal to do it. And secondly, even where basic primary healthcare structure is a mess, to have a cosmetic surgeon to actually do this kind of surgeries which requires a certain amount of expertise is, other than a few big cities, it is not really there anywhere else. So you do see these cases happening. I can send you in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka. There are 4-5 cities where we see these happening in increasing numbers because there are doctors willing to do it, because word has got around that yes, you can actually do this. Which is why Tamil Nadu, the Madras High Court, just 2 months ago, Madras High Court has given a directive that sex affirmative surgery, that is this surgeries on the baby, is to be banned, and Tamil Nadu 2 months ago became the first state in India to ban intersex surgeries. And the court made it clear in writing that even if the parents consent to such a surgery, parental consent, which is generally considered valid for a minor, in this case will not be considered consent, because we do not know the gender of the baby, we do not know how the surgery will affect the baby. So whatever surgeries have to be done will be with the consent of the child after the child reaches adulthood. So Tamil Nadu is the only state in India right now where the intersex surgeries are completely banned. We are trying to push it to the national ban, but that's not really very easy, because frankly speaking, I have come across doctors who have very steadfast views on what is right and wrong, and there's no way to get them to look at it in some other way. But I think that Madras High Court judgment has really been a very strong push in the right direction.
And can you just throw some light on these drugs which could, which are considered or already identified as the,
I
triggering
unfortunately
points?
don't remember the names, but I can give you the list of names which are banned and not to be used by pregnant women because of this masculinizing features in the fetus. That I can send it to you, but unfortunately I will not be able to give those names with you right now.
And another thing, maybe all may be interested also, I am also interested, the hormonal changes that are seen and how it complicates clinical outcomes of a person.
No, what has been done, what has been studied repeatedly and found is that studies of hormones compared with transgender hormones to other adults, there is no variation. I mean, the idea was that if transgenders are behaving like, or Trityapanthis are behaving like females, maybe their hormone patterns are similar to women's hormone patterns. There is no such thing. It has been repeatedly done and found out that their hormone patterns are similar to male patterns because they were born male. So there is no hormonal variation there which causes them to have female traits. So what is assumed, but this is again theory because ethically it is not really possible to do research on it, that when the fetus is growing, some hormone definitely seem to be playing some influence on how your brain is being constructed, and maybe that is the reason why when you grow your brain has actually developed in a different manner than other brains. This is theory. There is no way to really know practically whether why a person specifically, as I said, has a gender female and not male. What is known is multiple studies which have shown, especially between twins, that whether you are raised in a particular environment does not contribute to whether you being female. The general Indian understanding is that there are quite a few boys who are dressed in girls' clothes, who are braided hair, given pet female names, and there is a general assumption that if you talk to the child like a girl to a girl or dress him up like a girl, he will develop a gender girl. That is not true at all. It does not happen that way. So you cannot train or teach a gender to someone. It is something that is innate. It cannot be changed. The only thing is that what can we do to make that person's part of that mainstream, and while doing so make sure that we don't feel equally comfortable in dealing with that person.
In LGBTQA, what is queer and allies? I mean, you don't
What is
know.
Q? What is
We say
Q and I?
Yeah.
Okay, L is lesbian,
Yes.
G is gay, B is bisexual, T is transgender, I is intersex, and Q is queer. My organization name is Bindu Queer Rights Foundation. Now the word queer has many meanings. Sometimes it is used as a short form to club together all the sexual and gender minorities. When I say Bindu Queer Rights Foundation, or we have our annual Advait International Queer Film Festival at National Film Archives. When I use the word International Queer Film Festival, rather than using LGBTI, I use the word queer, which means it's an umbrella term for everything. But it need not always be an umbrella term. There are persons who may say that I do not belong to any of these categories, but I do not belong to this binary framework either. So those who are not sure where they fall in, or other categories which are not defined under this but are minorities, can also be clubbed as queer. So when I say LGBTIA, Q, now A, which we have not really spoken about. For example, A might fall into Q. A is asexual, someone who reaches adolescence but for a long period of time never feels sexually attracted to either men or women. They are called asexual. Just as you have bisexual where your attraction is for both, you could have some who are attracted to neither. Or there are other categories also, pangender. We have been saying that you could be either male gender or female gender. It could be transgender, but still you will have one particular gender, either male or female. But there are a few who have multiple genders together, that I feel like a man and woman both. I cannot say specifically whether I feel like a man or a woman. It's called pan is multiple. So pan gender is multiple genders together. So there are various categories here. Here we have simplified it as LGBTIA. So Q will have all such categories, not only these but others which have not yet been found out or they are too small to have come to our notice, that can also become part of the Q. So it depends on which context the word Q is used. When I say LGBTIQ, it means all sexual gender minorities that do not fall into LGBTI. When I say LGBTI, when I say queer film festival, it means all LGBTI plus etc. All of them using that word queer. And lastly, queer could also mean someone who is questioning, someone who has not really found his her place. I do not know whether I really which, because this is a complex spectrum, three-dimensional with multiple. It's not a black and white thing. It's a huge gray zone between with various shades. So someone maybe I'm not sure where I really fit in. So you could be in that questioning phase. That could also fall into queer. Queer could also mean questioning also. So that's how queer will have different meanings in different contexts.
Sir, as we talk about gender equality, so we concern more about male and female, particularly empowering women and girls. So is any target related to transgender concerning gender equality?
Sorry, is the
Like as we are talking about gender equality, sustainable development goals, so in that we used to empower women and girls more. But is there any target related to transgenders so they will consider equally under
well,
community?
it's only now that after the Supreme Court judgment in 2014, it is only in 2019 that the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act was passed by the Parliament. 2019, and in 2019 and 2020, the Act has 2 or 3 very good features. Some of it have been from the judgment. Transgenders have the right to identify themselves. Transgenders have to be given special provisions, special welfare measures for them. For example, Maharashtra has Sanjay Gandhi Niradhar Pension Yojana. So pension scheme which is there for old people, HIV positive people under the Sanjay Gandhi Niradhar Pension Yojana is also applicable to transgenders. Or for old age persons also there is a pension scheme in Maharashtra. It is also applicable to transgenders. The problem with such schemes which are now developing and which have already been there was that how would you identify transgender was the issue, because we have filed certain applications with the Department of Social Justice, but they say you need to have a certificate that that person transgender, otherwise anyone could claim it. Now how do I certify that a certain person is transgender? That was the key, and so we had to wait for that act to be passed. The act has made the provision that the district collector of your district is empowered on application to give a certificate of transgender to people who apply. On there is a format, affidavit and everything. We have filed for 10 so far. We just did it last week in fact. So it will take about a month for us to get the first result. But once they get that certificate and ID, they will be officially recognized as transgenders. They can use that certificate to apply for change in name and or gender in all other documents, whether it be passport, school leaving certificate, driving license, MSCD bill, property card, anything, everything. So once they start getting that, they will be able to apply for these measures. It's not that there are no measures, it's just that there was no way of identification, but that has been recently resolved. So we hope that in the years down the line, we would have more schemes in place. The one important thing that was stated by the Supreme Court, which had not gone here, is reservations for transgenders for employment and education under ACBC category. That is something that is not done that. That is the lacuna of the act, because reservation entail caste equations also. So, and that is a tricky issue, because then it has to go through a huge other committees to find out, because if it's a Dalit who is a transgender will already have a reservation under the Dalit category, some category, STN. A Brahmin who is a transgender, should he be given reservation, and under what category? Now these are tricky issues, because we have limits, 50% open limit quota. Indira Swani judgment has given us certain limits that have been set, and which is why everyone wants to overturn that quota, so that OBC quota, the total quota can increase to 60% plus blah blah. But I will not go into the details because they are too complex for even me to understand. The point is that when you look at two transgenders, it becomes tricky, because even for a Dalit who has reservations, for a post where you have two Dalits applying, one is equally qualified, one is a transgender and one is not a transgender, whom do you think you will select? So there is discrimination at various levels, direct and indirect. How do you address that? So these are issues that we are now starting to really come up with, but till we have the identity card system in place, we can't even start with those issues. So once they get legally identified as transgender, we can start working on, okay, how do you leverage this now to get their specific rights that they have been denied, or privileges that they have not been able to access. But practically, I want to know, do you feel practical challenges when if a person were to walk in? I'm sorry, we are over time, so let's just keep this as just one last question from my side.
It is a natural, so why any issues is there? As you said, my statement you gave written as natural.
Wouldn't it be natural for us to be a bit uncomfortable or reserved or worried about how to deal with a person? Maybe, for example, many people have bad experiences in dealing with transgenders on the street.
Answer this question. Suppose
No.
if a transgender come here, what would be the scenario? What will you do?
You will feel uncomfortable. Let us be honest.
Yeah, let us be honest and then try and
Yes.
how do you respond? Where do you send them?
Because when we
For
see
treatment?
them on the streets also, we are uncomfortable.
You have only
On
male
the street,
people.
we are
We are
uncomfortable, right?
uncomfortable, yes.
So now, if they come for a massage,
Where do you send them?
if they want to use the washroom, where do you send them? But the Supreme Court judgment has made it clear that they need to have separate facilities for washrooms. So, eventually we are going to start seeing these questions. Once in a while, if someone walks in, you will may probably adjust, okay, तू इधर जाके अब मैं बाहर रुकता हूँ. Something like that.
कोई
You will make
आया
this,
ही नहीं. I don't think so.
We
have,
haven't received.
But
okay.
this
There
is
was a
something-
one therapist, madam. He was working in the that social worker community, but he was not any transgender or anything. But he used to work
this
for the
question
voluntary.
was, this question was faced when KEM Hospital in Rastapet approached us. They have started developing a system within LGBT inclusive and holistic. They want to change the entire system which makes it comfortable for everyone. And what I did, we had dialogues with about 700 staff, nurses and security, ward boys, doctors, everyone on these issues. And the question was that if a transgender is to be admitted to a ward, where would you? If a transgender wants to use a washroom, OPD, let's forget IPD, OPD. Which washroom? Do you have a washroom that caters for a transgender OPD patient that comes in? No, we don't have it. Do you have washroom if a transgender is in wheelchair and has to wheel in? Is there any, forget about being disability enabled, we do not have anything in place for anyone who does not fall into this quote unquote normal binary mode. So that is when we started making a list of things that we will have to start relooking at policies. What if a staff is hired who is a transgender? Where does the staff change? The nurse, let's say she's a transgender, where does she change her clothes? Will other nurses have issues with her working in the male ward or female ward? If it's an Aya, would the patient be uncomfortable if the Aya is to use a bedpan with a patient who is not comfortable with transgenders? So all of these issues, whether it be staff, whether it be the customers that we are coming in, we need to start looking at it in a wider way than what we have looked at so far and see how we are going to slowly evolve first ourselves and the systems around us so that it wouldn't matter to us who walks in because it's all there in place. And it's a long-term thing. I can say this in 2 minutes, but it takes years to have that whole thing in place. But you start it today, maybe 2 years down the line, you will be comfortable to know that yes, it doesn't matter. We are inclusive enough to cater to anyone and everyone who comes in. So I'm going to, unless there is a comment, I think it's already late, we need to stop. But if you have any questions, my mobile number is, I will give you my mobile number. You can WhatsApp me your questions and I can answer them.
Yeah, we will put it on the,
Sorry?
we will put it on the group. the
Okay,
program,
sure.
So they can.
97.
No,
So you will do that? Okay. Or doctor will do that so that we'll save
we
time.
can tell, but we will also
Okay,
put it on the.
97.
Yeah.
636 40 480 97 636 40 This is my WhatsApp number. The problem is that I may not be able to pick your calls directly, so it's better if you write a question and I can answer it wherever I can. So, okay. So again, thank you all for inviting me. And if you have any question, feel free to get back to me. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for being here. I have one question. I think the sustainable development goals you're talking about. There's also goal number 16, which talks about inclusive societies, under which the LGBTQA community also there are targets for them as well, no, for those communities. So, thank you very much, ma'am. And would you say something?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we are only, please take your seat. This is one effort to, first effort by NIN to bring in this into discussion because we are not sensitive enough, first of all, let me admit. As again, because it is not taught, because it is not openly discussed. And we find it very difficult to articulate this. In that context, it is very, very relevant, and particularly the youngsters who are getting into profession need to know all these dimensions, and seniors, of course, in case if they have to deal with them, and while they have to behave more, not only humanely out of way, but then legally also correct. That is also, we can't do something, anything inadvertently to cause a problem to others. So that is, with that, we had a discussion, then she said, you are here available. So thank you very much for readily accepting it, and we want to have more such sessions, and